Lytudiep, hello, dear friends. The happy scene brought by God to them when Diep and James' daughter Cherry was playing with her parents with her first steps. In a small house nestled amidst the serene green trees of the countryside, where the chirping of birds every morning felt like a soft greeting from nature itself, lived a family of three. Lytudiep, a gentle mother with a quiet strength, James, a successful CEO from Europe, and their beloved daughter, Cherry. Cherry was the culmination of their love, a gift that arrived after years of patience and waiting. The moment she took her first steps, the air in the house seemed to still, as if the world paused to witness the miracle unfolding before them. It was a sunny morning when it happened. Cherry, just about a year old, was playing on the soft rug in the living room. Lytudiep was tidying up around the house, occasionally glancing at her daughter. James was in his home office, attending to work, but with the door slightly ajar, so he could hear the sounds of their home, the life they were building. As if sensing the moment was near, Cherry stopped playing. She propped herself up on the edge of the sofa, gripping the fabric with her tiny hands. Slowly, she stood, her legs shaking, uncertain but determined. Lytudiep, who had been watching closely, held her breath. She softly whispered, "Cherry?" But the words barely left her lips before Cherry took her first step forward. Then another, and another. Cherry's tiny feet moved in awkward, uncoordinated motions, but the smile that formed on her face said it all. Her first steps were more than just a milestone. They were a symbol of all the growth, love, and hope that had been planted in the family. Without thinking, Lytudiep let out a quiet gasp of joy, and as Cherry reached her, she fell into her arms, giggling with delight. From the hallway, James appeared, eyes wide with surprise, and in an instant, he rushed over to join her. He bent down, scooping up both mother and daughter into his arms, feeling the weight of the moment. They stood there for a few seconds, holding each other, savoring the preciousness of the moment. Warmth of their family. The room felt still, almost as though the world outside had stopped moving. It was the moment they would always look back on. The day Cherry took her first steps, the day their little girl grew a little bit older, and the day they realized that their family was bound not just by love, but by every shared moment of growth and change. As the days passed, Cherry's steps became more confident. She started exploring the house, moving from the living room to the kitchen, from the hallway to the garden. Her curiosity had no limits. Lytudiep, who was once filled with anxiety over the fragility of her daughter, now found herself in awe of Cherry's energy. She was unstoppable, walking all over, touching everything in sight, trying to understand the world around her. But with this newfound independence came new challenges. Cherry, still a baby in many ways, would trip and fall off. She would cry out when she couldn't reach something or when her little legs grew tired. Lytudiep often found herself up at all hours of the night, soothing Cherry after a restless sleep. James, although always attentive and loving, found it difficult to balance his demanding career with the needs of his family. Despite his best efforts to be there, his time at home was often cut short by meetings and travel. This left Lytudiep feeling the weight of parenthood alone at times. One evening, after yet another sleepless night spent caring for Cherry, Lytudiep found herself sitting at the kitchen table, sipping a glass of cold water, staring out into the dark night. The house was quiet, save for the occasional sound of the wind rustling the leaves outside. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, and her heart weighed down by the unspoken worries of motherhood. She loved Cherry more than anything, but there were moments when the constant demand of motherhood made her feel as though she was losing herself. James entered the room quietly, a soft smile on his face. Without saying a word, he walked over and draped a sweater over her shoulders. He sat next to her, their shoulders gently touching, a silent comfort in the simple gesture. For a few moments, they just sat there in silence. There were no words needed. "I know it's hard," James finally said, his voice gentle and filled with understanding. "I know I'm not here as much as I should be, but we are in this together, Ly. You are not alone." Lytudiep turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She smiled softly, though it was tinged with the sadness of the reality she was facing. "I feel like I'm losing myself sometimes. It's like I'm drowning in this endless cycle of caring for Cherry, doing what needs to be done, and forgetting about me." James reached out, taking her hand in his. "I see you. I see everything you do for us. I see how much you sacrifice. And I will be here more, I promise. I want to be here with you, for you and for Cherry. We'll do this together." It wasn't much, but for Lytudiep, it was everything. In that moment, the weight on her chest lightened, just a little. She had spent so much time caring for her family that she had forgotten to take care of herself. But in that simple moment of reassurance, she felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that they would navigate the challenges of parenthood side by side. As the months passed, Cherry grew. She was no longer the wobbly toddler who took her first steps in the living room. Now, she was a lively, bright-eyed 3-year-old who loved to explore, to talk, and to sing. Every day brought new discoveries. Her first word, her first drawing, the first time she fed herself without making a mess. All of these milestones were small but significant. Lytudiep documented every little achievement in a journal, capturing moments that would one day become memories. James, on the other hand, continued to record videos of Cherry. He filmed her in the garden, her face full of wonder as she discovered the beauty of flowers and the first time she danced in the living room to the sound of music. "Look at her," Lytudiep said one evening, as they both watched a video of Cherry attempting to sing along to a nursery rhyme. "She's growing so fast." James smiled, his eyes softening as he looked at his daughter. "She's growing, yes, but she's always going to be our little girl, no matter how big she gets." And then there was the day Cherry began school. The morning was a blur of activity as they prepared her for her first day in kindergarten. She wore a little pink dress with a bunny on it, her hair neatly tied with a ribbon. As they walked her to the school gate, she clung to Lytudiep's hand, her small fingers wrapped tightly around her mother's. But as soon as they reached the gate, Cherry pulled away, standing tall for a moment before waving and calling out, "I can do it on my own now." Lytudiep felt a lump in her throat. It was a bittersweet moment. The realization that her little girl, who had once been so dependent on her, was now ready to take the next step. In life. James put his arm around Lytudiep's shoulders as they watched Cherry walk through the gate, her back straight and confident. "She's ready," James whispered. "She's ready to fly." That day marked the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. Cherry was growing, and with each day, she would continue to grow, to learn, and to discover the world. But the love and support of her parents would always be there, guiding her, no matter how far she went. Years passed. Cherry became a bright and enthusiastic young girl, full of dreams and curiosity. Lytudiep and James, though still busy with their own lives, never stopped supporting her, never stopped cheering for every little victory, every step forward. One afternoon, as Lytudiep sat in Cherry's room, watching her draw a picture of their family, she realized just how much had changed. Cherry was now in first grade, growing up quickly before her eyes. She was no longer the baby who had taken those first steps, the toddler who needed help with everything. But in the quiet of that room, as she watched her daughter draw, Lytudiep realized that no matter how old Cherry got, no matter how far she went in life, she would always remember that first moment, the moment when she took her first step and her parents were right there, cheering her on. "Mom," Cherry said, looking up from her drawing, "tomorrow at school, we have to tell a story. I think I'll tell everyone about the time I took my first steps." Lytudiep smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." And so, the story of Cherry's first steps, a story of growth, love, and the bond that held their family together, continued to unfold with every step forward they took together. How are you guys today? Thanks for watching this video. What do you think will happen next?